The World Cup is starting and is on at the moment. And actually the World Cup is the biggest PR opportunity of any sporting or major international event in the world. So we at DeSmogUK are interested in looking at who is sponsoring the World Cup this year. Gazprom, Qatar Airways, Hyundai, Kia Motors, so the Russian state-owned leading natural gas company, airlines, motoring companies, basically big polluters. The problem is that for the first time, FIFA has signed up to a UN initiative to reduce its own emission and its own carbon footprint. Now, on the one hand, FIFA is saying that it takes the environment seriously and it wants to reduce its carbon emission, but on the other hand, it's actually taking a lot of money from lucrative sponsorship deals from these big polluting companies which are using fossil fuels, which are contributing to climate change ultimately. This has been described by Nicolas Wojeda from 350.org as the highest level of greenwash. FIFA signed up to the UN climate change offsetting scheme. Now, an offset is a way of compensating your emissions. So, for example, to neutralize the emissions of a flight by investing into green projects which are meant to reduce emissions. So you end up at zero. And FIFA is the first international sporting organization to have signed up to the UN's offsetting scheme. Offsets are a really complicated and controversial way of reducing emissions. The UN has been running its own offsetting scheme, but that scheme has been accused of being fundamentally flawed by an organization called Carbon Market Watch. And there have been many reports looking at how effective the offsetting scheme is in reducing emission. And actually, the conclusion for many of them is that they're not really fit for purpose, and that it's not the most effective way of reducing your emissions. So there's not much real substance in all these big announcements. Greenwashing is when a company pretends that it is taking on green environmental actions, when in a matter of fact it's just using a platform to pretend that it is taking those actions. So for example, Gazprom, state-owned leading natural gas company, is also the first company to have drilled in the Arctic shelf, a project which has been criticized widely by environmentalists. Gazprom is also building Nord Stream 2, which is a big gas infrastructure project across Europe, which would effectively be locking the continent into decades of fossil fuel infrastructure. But by sponsoring FIFA and by using FIFA's green credentials of having signed up to this UN emission reduction scheme, Gazprom looks good because Gazprom looks like it's caring about the environment. As a matter of fact, its entire business strategy is focused on burning fossil fuels. FIFA pledged to offset 2.9 tons of carbon dioxide every time a ticket holder signs up to the scheme on its website. This means that for everybody who's flying into Russia, taking a plane, FIFA is going to offset that average, an estimate that they've calculated. The problem with that is that the scheme has been capped to 100,000 tons of carbon dioxide. Now, that may seem like a lot, but in reality, that's a drop in the ocean. That would mean that less than 35,000 fans would be able to offset their travel emissions when they're attending the World Cup. We're expecting over 1 million football fans to fly to Russia, so really you can see that that emission reduction scheme is really marginal. Each sponsor has a page on FIFA's website where it's presenting the company and it's presenting its business strategy and what it's doing as part of its partnership with FIFA. Interestingly, only Coca-Cola, which is another FIFA sponsor, has mentioned climate change as part of their promotional package and their sponsorship deal with FIFA. So neither have Gazprom nor Qatar Airways nor Hyundai mentioned anything about their sustainability efforts or how they're taking into account emission reduction schemes. For example, Qatar Airways is offering fans travel packages to Russia, so you get a flight and maybe a discount on a ticket, but that package does not mention FIFA's offsetting scheme, nor does it mention any other way in which football fans can try and reduce their emissions. So there seems like there's a bit of a discrepancy between FIFA's effort to promote this emission reduction scheme, taking the climate seriously, and on the other hand, its sponsors looking like they're not really doing much to try and reach up to that goal. Well, football fans can put pressure on their clubs, whether locally, nationally or internationally, to divest from fossil fuels and to stop taking big sponsorship deals from these polluting companies such as Gazprom and others. There's plenty of other examples. And in the words of Nicola Wojcicki, who's from the campaign group 350.org, football is meant to bring people together, and these fossil fuel companies are tearing the world apart.